What is up, Rad Potential YouTube? I'm Mr. Rad, and we just drove this 400 horsepower on pump gas Mazda RX8 6,000 miles from New York City to Los Angeles and then back to Indiana. I guess Indiana, New York City, Los Angeles, you get the picture. 6,000 miles on what most people would say is the most unreliable vehicle that exists on the planet. It has no pistons, we have a giant turbo, and we are sitting here at risk of spitting our apex seals out our exhaust. So how did I get this car to be reliable enough to make that drive with literally no issues? We just cruised across the country and burned nearly 3 gallons of premix in this vehicle. So we're gonna go through everything that I did to this car to prepare and survive that trip. And on the way throughout this video, you guys should comment below, what things did I not bring that you think I should have brought? Let's get right into it. First things first, I've got a sleeping bag for when and if it did break, we wouldn't be suffering in the cold inside my RX8. Behind the seat, got a little cooler where we had our drinks, snacks, you name it. A bunch of water, which actually doubles as engine coolant if you need it. And this is probably the most important section of the vehicle as far as vehicular specific parts. But we have a spare set of spark plugs wrapped up in here, ready to go. Some 9s. This is a little bit aggressive, so we do run a little bit colder of a plug. Not Milwaukee tools. This is my wiring box. So in here, I brought a spare O2 sensor, some DTM connectors in case we melted something, some spare ignition coil plugs, which you'll see I've got coils here in a second, some relays, an extra fuel pump. Now this is not the same as what's in there, but changing a fuel pump in 1 hour is cheaper than a towing bill, and you'd be able to at least get home. So I brought a spare fuel pump and some assorted, vacuum caps, some Dash 6 AN fuel fittings, some Tefsel wire, some good stuff. If you need a little bit of a wiring pick-me-up, this is that box. I think I also have a spare coolant temperature sensor in here and some electrical tape, Never know. Pack it all in here on our Cannonball if we broke down. Any sort of wiring or Haltech sensor issue, I would just sort out grabbing this box. All the depinning tools, you name it, are in there. Next up, gloves, a empty Dr. Pepper bottle, some duct tape, gotta have that, or I guess Gorilla tape, even better yet. And I have 2 cut radiator hoses. Now you might not understand why these are cut like this. However, on my car with the RX7 engine swap, there is 1 radiator hose that is not an OEM hose. I had to remake it and it has some hard lines in it, but I made it from an OEM hose. These are the 2 sections of that OEM hose I would need should I have a leak in that vicinity. The other one is just an OEM RX8 hose that I shortened, but no big deal there. A very important part is this alternator. However, we've already made our road trip, and this is the dead alternator. We had one die on us on the way, and I swapped this out at a gas station. I just happened to be like, I have a spare RX-7 alternator. I'm gonna throw it behind the seat. It's like 8 pounds. On a cross-country run, you're not really worried about the weight of your vehicle so much, so spare alternator came in handy. Would you bring one on your 6,000 mile road trip in an RX-7? Nah, we did it last year without it. More trash. These are 2 IGN-1A ignition coils. I brought these along because that's what's on this car. 2 backup coils. You never know. Extra plug wires. You never know if you're going to need one. And again, everything that I'm bringing along is basically, we would abort our Cannonball run, our race across the country, but we would at least not be stranded in the middle of Kansas, waiting for some tornadoes and some magic Tin Mans. Alternator belt, water pump belt. This is a real slick little jump pack. So brought a little jumper pack in case we killed the battery. Needed to jump start it. Handy little device. It's crazy how small they can make these things now. Probably one of the most important parts, and something an RX-8 does not come with, is a spare tire. You could have gotten like a spare tire kit for a little one in the trunk. We went ahead and just packed a full-size spare. We have a jack in the back, which you'll see in a second. And I think that's about it for in here. My toolkit's on the other side, which I'll show you when we go to the trunk. But yeah, bring a full-size spare, especially on any road trip. And also, if you already have a spare, make sure it's aired up. In the trunk, this thing is a little flamey, so my taillight is pretty sooted up. There's honestly not a lot of stuff back here, okay? Giant fuel cell, which is why we're squatting. But I packed some tools in different locations so they'd be easier to find. So it might be counterintuitive to you counterintuitive. The word is kind of hard to say sometimes. This is my wrenches and sockets. So things that are small, easy to get to, you can sort through them in this little box instead of having to dig through all your screwdrivers in like a crazy tool bag. Some people probably have a more efficient way to pack this stuff, like a fancy branded, you know, foam-filled toolbox, but those are also large and we didn't have a lot of space. So packed all that in here. Premix. This is all I have left of the premix right here, guys, besides that little bottle, is 1 half-gallon. And we burned 3 of these, 3 full ones of these, driving across the country. So I had this car set up with an oil metering pump, but I had some issues with it, so we had to premix. So we mix oil with the gas to make the trip. For rotary guys, that's a normal thing. For you normal Cannonball people, that's kind of different. It's just like a 2-stroke engine inside this RX8. Differential and transmission fluid. Brake fluid, gotta have that. Some coolant, gotta have some coolant, even though we have water up front. I think that bottle is leaking. Lovely. A weird one for you, but this is some universal gasket maker. So this is like gasket material that you can cut with a knife to make a new gasket. On older cars, this is pretty typical that they use paper gaskets. Modern cars kind of use O-rings and stuff. So depending on where you're at in your vehicular age, this might be beneficial or not, but this is handy. Intake manifold on this car, water pump, a lot of that stuff uses a paper gasket, and I'd be able to fix it on the side of the road. Oil. We didn't even have any oil leaks. I didn't need any of this, but some VR1 2050. This is a small electrical box and some nuts and bolts. So you want to bring, at least I did, like a spare 8mm bolt or a spare exhaust manifold bolt or something for the intake manifold, etc. Just a small handful, along with some like butt connectors, a ton of fuses. This lives in my trailer when we go to rally events. It's super handy to just throw it into here. This is a random spring box. However, it has hoses and fittings. This isn't anything super special, but it kind of is. I have some 3/8 fuel line hose in case we need to jerry rig something. And also I've got this -10 AN line that's fairly long, okay? This line is the perfect length for a rotary engine, so I can loop the oil coolers, meaning if I run into something and I have an oil cooler start leaking, I can simply loop them around on the engine so that they're hooked up to each other and I don't have an oil cooler in line, and then we wouldn't have that oil leak. So this, coupled with my 5 quarts of oil, if we yard sailed a raccoon on the side of the road and it wiped out an oil cooler, I could at least put it back together to get it off the side of the highway without having to tow it. In addition to just some hose clamps for the radiator, a couple T-bolt clamps for the intercooler piping, little things that could break. And this box is, that's done. Torched. Some more gloves, never know. Working on a hot car on a road trip. Pre-mixing stuff, need that. Rags everywhere. Some more coolant. Milwaukee light, tire inflator, just in case. Oh, I need to reinstall my trunk bulb because at the car show we were at 7 stock, I wanted to be able to leave the trunk open, but I didn't want to, there we go, look at that. I didn't want to run my battery dead. An excessive amount of zip ties, especially the long ones. We got to have those. Nailed it. And then floor jack handle. I'm not a big fan of your scissor twister jacks. So Harbor Freight, free advertisement for Harbor Freight, sells this real trick aluminum jack. It's really light. I wouldn't like use this around the shop, but this is very handy for taking to the track and stuff. So I brought the aluminum jack. It's still heavy, but I just trust this over one of those twisty goo scissor quadruple fall on your face jacks any day of the week. Bam. Trunk emptied. And I guess the elephant in the room, my fuel tank. I will show you when we get to the other side. First aid kit, gotta have it. Good stuff. Just throw it in your car, trust me. And the binoculars for spotting the 5.0 on the road. That's not Mustangs. That's the guys trying to keep us driving slow. Another empty coolant bottle. Now, I've got some Teflon tape in here, which I didn't pack, so we had to buy some. And then this big fire blanket covers up my fuel cell. The elephant in the room, literally. This is giant. This is a 52 gallon fuel cell from a pontoon boat. And what this fuel cell does is it gives me, just stuff everywhere in here, guys. There we go. So this fuel cell gives me the ability to drive nearly 1,000 miles without having to stop. This fuel is filled up from right here, so inside the car, you have to open the doors. You get a lot of weird looks at gas stations. You fill it here. This line right here with a filter goes to this pump. The pump fills the RX8's gas tank. So then while you're driving down the highway, when you hit a quarter tank, you just hit the switch right here in the center console. You hear that pump kick on. It's not as loud as you think once you have all your gear and stuff back here. But that pump kicks on, and then you just, as you're driving, you watch your fuel gauge go up. It's pretty surreal to see your gauge going up while you're cruising down the road. However, if you are ripping, you know, Cannonball run style, there is a level of duty that you're using the engine at where this doesn't keep up and your gauge will keep going down. So you kind of have to balance, you know, how fast you go with when you're filling to the not drink more than what you're filling. Yeah, science and stuff. Anyways, this thing is just ratchet strapped in here. I've got this wooden support that holds it up. Nothing too crazy. On our run, we actually burnt up this fuel pump, so we had to switch it out for another one. But let's go ahead and get this thing out of here. It'll really give you a sense of how big this is once it's not sitting inside the trunk. So I add these blocks of wood in here because with the spare tire sitting in here, I didn't want it to cause any fuel leaks in and around where the fuel lines are going through the chassis. You know, safety first on this deal. All right. Ew. I swear one of these times I'm going to sit in this spot as I get older and I'm not going to be able to get back out. Right now I'm pretty skinny behind the seat on the floor. Okay, so we just got, oh, now there's fuel coming out. That sounds like a winner. I disconnected my fuel line so that I can pump the fuel out of the big tank into these normal gas cans. Oh, stretch. Don't fly out of there. Oh, get the hoist. Not that big yet. We'll return when my tank is empty. So I got this thing drained finally, drained 20 gallons of fuel out of this fuel cell. I literally had to start putting gasoline in Buzz, in the R3, in other cars. So like my pickup truck now has some premix in it, which will be fine. But I ran out of gas jugs. I only had 10 gallons, as y'all saw, and we had to keep cycling it through. You know, 10 hours later, and a little bit colder. Custom. Oh yeah. This is what a fuel tank looks like. Oh, massive. Now I'm in a tight spot. All right, guys, so this is the fuel tank. 52 gallons in this beast in the back of the RX8 to get me the range that we needed. It just so happened that I was on Marketplace and found this tank out of a pontoon boat that just fit perfectly in the back of the RX8. I did not actually make this. This is like the luckiest luck of the draw find ever, that this was for sale last year before we did the first run. Works perfect. I don't know how big it is as far as like the dimensions, but it's the right size for an RX8, and it's way bigger than you think. And then also the RX8 is way smaller than you think once you shove this in the back of it. But happy to have this out of the car because we're not going to use this RX8 again for a Cannonball. Bam. Wiring harness for the fuel pump. And And last but not least, the toolkit. So what did I have in my toolkit on the Cannonball? Electric ratchet, always handy. Gotta have one of those. 1/2-inch drive ratchet, which saved a couple people at 7-Star. It was basically my breaker bar. Fun fact, my grandpa used to use this when he was 16 and worked at a Chevy dealership. So this is like older than probably all of us watching the video combined, which is cool. Good, nice place in there. Some wrenches, wiring tools, so a stripper, crimper, you name it, just in case we needed to change some wiring stuff. Gotta have that in there. Assorted screwdrivers, safety wire, probably the most important part. Zip ties and safety wire are gonna save you just about any situation. If you're a car guy, get some safety wire, because sometimes a zip tie doesn't work. Drill bits and a little drill. Honestly, probably an underestimated thing to have. Now, I know if you do, you're rolling in like your sick Mercedes or your sick Audi, that stuff's probably not going to fly off. So you don't need safety wire and you don't need zip ties and you don't need a drill. But if you run over a raccoon and your front bumper is all mangled, okay, you're going to have to drill some holes in it to do the old stitch zip tie to hold it back together. Hence the drill and the drill bits. This is just a nice little Milwaukee 12-volt drill. Some drill bits. Not sponsored by Milwaukee, but I'd love to be. Assorted other wrenches. You never know. Honestly, with what I have in this tool bag, I could probably pull the engine out, rebuild it, and put it back together. It doesn't take that much to work on these cars. Ooh, another little trick of the trade. Okay, so instead of packing a bunch of different screwdrivers and like little stuff, you can get these little, like, fix stuff around your house kits for the normal average human that's not a car guy. And they have all these lovely little bits. So your Torx bits, your Allen keys, flat blades, and your screwdrivers, a couple sockets. This is like a great kind of catch-all tool kit. Some little thing, it's like pocket size. But that's handy. Also for your safety wire nerds, you gotta have a safety wire pliers. This is like the handiest thing ever. So get you a safety wire pliers. Other than that, relatively standard. Some extensions, some sockets, Allen wrenches, a vice grip, but not for what you think. You don't use vice grips to actually take bolts or take things apart. You use a vice grip to hold things together. It's like a clamp. You can, when your oil cooler's falling off, you can vice grip the mount back on so it doesn't fall off the rest of the way. Not so much for the sake of a pliers. But otherwise, that's pretty much it. Stuff to take the wheels off, some assorted other sockets, extension, continuation of the wrenches, the 10mm, which is in this bag, which means we used it because it wasn't in the sockets bag. Same with the 17 wrench and the 11/16 shorty wrench. But as far as that goes, standard stuff. It's like my lovely little seat to sit on to chat with you guys here for the end. But what I want to tell you guys about really is, I'm gonna flip this over and crash and burn, what I did specifically to this rotary engine to make it last 6,000 miles, and the answer is absolutely nothing. There's nothing special that me as a experienced, having built 20, 30, 40, 50 engines for different cars and having torn down a bunch of them, there's no special ingredients in this rotary engine that are any different than what would have came in your normal car, okay? This is an OEM rebuilt Mazda RX-7 engine. It has OEM seals, it has OEM Mazda soft seals, OEM Apex seals, everything put back to stock. I didn't even build it. It was built by somebody else. The housings are in good shape. Everything was good. It makes good compression. We just drove it. The important thing to note is that this car is not on an OEM ECU. It's on a Haltech. One of the things I've always believed in is that a bad engine can be made to run really well on good engine management and good sensors attached to it. So we've got full function engineering fuel rails with injector dynamics injectors. These are very high quality pieces. We have a full function engineering trigger wheel on this, not an OEM crank sensor. That gives us a more consistent readout. The engine is happier, at higher boost levels, making some horsepower. This is also set up with a drive-by-wire, mainly because the RX8's drive-by-wire. So that is a GM performance unit, Gen 4, your typical LS throttle body, like super reliable, super basic. We obviously had an alternator failure. that could literally happen to anybody. As far as the turbo, this is a $500 VS Racing turbo. This is not a fancy turbo. The manifold and downpipe are all Schedule 10 stainless, or at least the manifold is Schedule 10. The downpipe is, I think, 14 gauge stainless, all TIG welded. Nothing you wouldn't find on any, custom RX-7 turbo kit or anything like that. It's very basic stuff. There literally is nothing special in here besides the fact that it's an RX-7 in an RX-8. Besides the fact that it's an RX-7 engine in an RX-8 chassis, Haltech sensors, GM sensor, like it's pretty basic stuff in this deal. And tuned by Sean, patch harness to integrate the Haltech into this car. Other than that, I'm telling you, I don't know what people do to blow rotary engines up. I've blown my fair share of them up, but all of this is done to me. The last 2 Cannonballs, we did one in the RX-8, this car with the stock engine. We changed the engine and tried again, ran into some issues as y'all saw in the last video. Our Cannonball trying to get under 30 hours, we failed with this setup, and unfortunately this car is destined for a different purpose now, but it's literally got a body armor bottle for a Kuhn overflow. Like, this is nothing super special. So, there's no crazy aftermarket seals this and clearances this. This is just a stock RX-7 engine. There's nothing, 16th time. There's nothing special about this. So, the green car is getting revitalized. The old green machine has a whole different purpose. Show car to sell some of these turbo kits, which we'll be creating and have on the website, Rad Potential Racing, here soon. Turbo kits of RX-8s as well. And I just want to have a nice RX-8. A lot of these old cars get beat up, and this one, I got a lot of sentimental attachment to this old gal. So we're going to keep her alive and keep it fresh. But with that, that is my Cannonball preparation video. I hope somebody with way more Cannonball road trip experience watches this, because I want to learn what else I can do to make sure that our next Cannonball big road trip goes swimmingly and we're as prepared as we can be. I feel like we're as prepared as we could be now, and maybe it was just the luck of the draw. We kind of, hit the weather wrong and ran into some issues, but who knows? Maybe we're missing some tools that would keep us safe along the way. I did bring Arnie or Doug, one of those two, spilled a bunch of gasoline on his shoes. I did have an extra pair of shoes because of that. Didn't want to get stuck with gasoline-soaked shoes in my car that already smells like fuel, but that's what it is. I hope this is beneficial. I want it to hopefully inspire you guys to, one, drive your rotary cars more, okay? Don't be afraid of them. It's going to break if it's going to break. Get out and enjoy your car, right? But 2, let's do some more Cannonballs. And don't forget, live a life you don't need a vacation from, and keep it rad. And thank you so much for watching the video. Dang, I'm fired up that it's honestly not in Cannonball trim anymore, because I cannot wait for this to have all the cool body kit. I mean, I've been saying at the end of every video leading up to this, but this is like the same day, the day after we got back, I'm uncannonballing my car. But man, it's wild just to put into perspective that 12,000 miles on this RX-8 have been Cannonball runs. 12,000 miles, which is just gnarly to think about that it's done that twice. Twice we've driven this across the country and back. Wow. Peace, guys.